Hi everyone, welcome to Midnight Storytime. Before watching the video, please give me a like and subscribe. Thank you very much. Yvonne, my wife, has a first love, and today he returned. He gave us a heads up, and I was the one who took the initiative to suggest she go pick him up. Her first love said politely, "I hope I'm not being too much of a bother." In the end, the three of us shared a meal together. As it finished, while he was busy trying to insist on paying the bill, my wife quietly settled it behind his back. Later, a friend asked me, "Your wife's first love is back. Aren't you worried?" Truth be told, I genuinely don't mind. When I received the call from my wife, Yvonne, I was busy watering my new baby, a succulent I just picked up from the flower market downstairs. "Hubby, there's something I need to tell you." Yvonne's voice sounded calm, in that familiar tone of hers, decisive yet tinged with a hint of softness. "Oh," I murmured, carefully controlling the flow of water. "Go ahead, I'm listening. Are you going on a business trip? Or is there a party tonight?" There was a 2-second silence on the other end before she spoke. "No, it's not that. It's Cedric. He's back." The name Cedric was like a glass marble forgotten in a corner for years, suddenly kicked by a stray foot, rolling noisily to a stop right in front of me. I couldn't help but pause what I was doing. He was my wife's first love. Cedric was something of a legend in our circle. Since his student days, he had been a golden boy. His grades, looks, and family background were all top tier. Later, he went abroad to study and became incredibly successful, eventually turning into a Wall Street elite. Everyone assumed he and Yvonne were a match made in heaven. But unexpectedly, not long after he moved overseas, Yvonne married me, a man who, in everyone's eyes, was utterly ordinary, even suspected of being a trophy husband living off her. "Oh, he's back." My reaction was as flat as if we were discussing what to have for dinner. I even had the heart to gently poke one of the plump, round leaves of my succulent before asking, "What time does he arrive? I'll book a restaurant so we can give him a proper welcome-back dinner." Yvonne seemed to choke on her words for a moment. She probably didn't expect me to react this way. The script she had imagined likely involved me going silent, interrogating her, or showing at least a sliver of tension and insecurity. Regrettably for her, the man she married was me. "The flight lands at 3 p.m. tomorrow," Yvonne said, her voice carrying a trace of excitement she couldn't quite hide. "There's no need for a restaurant. I just wanted to let you know. After all, he is him, and you are you." That last part was clearly meant to reassure me. I chuckled, set the watering can down, and leaned against the balcony railing. The afternoon sun was warm, and the sound of children playing tag drifted up from below. "How could we not?" I said solemnly. "The man traveled all this way. We must ensure he feels the warmth and hospitality of the locals. Let's do this. I'll go with you to pick him up tomorrow. It'll make our family look more courteous." "Wait, you're coming too?" Yvonne was genuinely taken aback this time. "Of course," I said with mock gravity. "I'm your husband. Your ex-boyfriend, your first love, is back. Shouldn't I go and mark my territory?" "Just kidding." I paused, my tone softening. "I want any of those old friends who still have unrealistic fantasies about you to see that you're doing great. Your husband supports you. We're a team, a single unit." The other end of the line went silent for so long I thought the signal had dropped. I was just about to ask if she was still there when I heard Yvonne speak in a very low, slightly thick voice. "Thomas, you're so good to me." "Naturally," I replied without missing a beat. "Otherwise, why would you have ditched that sparkling Cedric back than to choose a dull gray pebble like me?" "Because the pebble is warm and can be held in one's hand for a lifetime," she whispered. She hung up quickly after saying that. I held the phone, laughing and shaking my head. This woman was still as easily embarrassed as ever. Honestly, regarding Cedric's return, I truly didn't mind. A man's greatest confidence doesn't come from how much wealth or status he possesses, but from the fact that the woman he loves has eyes only for him. And Yvonne had given me that absolute certainty. The next afternoon, I drove our most understated family SUV and dropped Yvonne off at the international arrivals gate right on time. Today, she wore a sharp, cream-colored skirt suit with her hair swept up, revealing her slender neck. She radiated the aura of a high-powered elite, the kind that tells strangers not to get too close, but her hand, tucked firmly under my arm, was gripping a bit tight. I leaned in and whispered to her. She didn't look at me, Her eyes were glued to the crowd at the exit, but her mouth was honest. A bit nervous. Not because of him, but because of the scene. I feel like I'm starring in an 8 p.m. soap opera. I chuckled at her words. Don't worry. With me here, I guarantee it'll turn into a sitcom. She shot me a glare, but the corners of her lips couldn't help but twitch upward. Just then, there was a stir in the crowd at the gate. A tall man in a sophisticated, long-cut overcoat pushed a luggage cart out. Even through the crowd, I recognized him instantly. He looked more mature than in his photos, carrying a more palpable sense of presence. He wore a practiced, measured smile. His gaze swept the room and quickly locked onto Yvonne. In that moment, the light in his eyes reflected a complex mix of surprise, nostalgia, and a focused determination to win it all back. He pushed his cart straight toward us. The gazes of several bystanders who sensed the drama began to flicker between the three of us. The air was thick with the scent of gossip. Yvonne, it's been a long time. Cedric's voice was deep and magnetic. He spread his arms wide, looking as though he intended to pull Yvonne into a hug. However, Yvonne simply leaned a fraction closer to me, her grip on my arm never loosening as she gave him a polite nod and a smile. It's been a long time, Cedric. Welcome back. Cedric's intended embrace fell short. The smile on his face stiffened for a split second before quickly smoothing back into a mask of composure. His gaze fell on me, sharp and calculating. This is Thomas. Yvonne's introduction was concise and clear. I played my part perfectly, stepping forward with a bright, beaming smile. Cedric, it's a pleasure. I've admired your reputation from afar for a long time. I often hear Yvonne mention you. She says you were her most respected senior back in university. I pointedly emphasized the word respected. Cedric's lip twitched. He likely expected me to use words like favorite or unforgettable. He shook my hand, and his grip wasn't light. You're being too modest, Thomas, he said. I just didn't expect Yvonne to marry quite so quickly. The comment seemed polite on the surface, but it was laced with subtext and provocation. He was implying that Yvonne's choice was rushed, perhaps even a mistake. Yvonne's brows knit together, about to speak, but I beat her to the punch with an air of sudden realization. Oh, Cedric, you have no idea. I don't have any grand talents. I just know how to whip up a few home-cooked meals to keep her stomach happy. As the saying goes, the way to a woman's heart is through her stomach. My half-joking self-deprecation instantly deflated the ambiguous, charged atmosphere Cedric was trying to build. Yvonne couldn't help but let out a little snore of laughter, playfully swatting my arm. Thomas, what are you talking about? She giggled. Cedric's expression soured. He looked like a man who had prepared a powerhouse punch only to hit a ball of cotton. He had arrived with a rehearsed aura of superiority, only to be completely derailed by my simple house husband persona. He hadn't expected me to lack jealousy or insecurity. Instead, I was leaning into the joke. It didn't fit his script at all. Let's get to the car. It's windy out here, I said enthusiastically, taking charge of his luggage cart. Cedric, I've booked a place for dinner tonight to welcome you back. Don't be a stranger. Just think of it as my Yvonne treating an old classmate. I smiled with total sincerity, as if he truly were just a regular, run-of-the-mill old friend. Cedric watched the natural interaction between Yvonne and me. He saw me effortlessly take her handbag, and then he looked down at the luggage cart I was now pushing for him. His eyes darkened, but he eventually forced a polite smile. Then I'm troubling you too much, Thomas. No trouble at all. I waved it off, pushing the cart ahead with a cheerful stride. We're practically family. No need for formalities. Behind me, Yvonne hurried to catch up, leaning into my ear to whisper, "You really are a natural-born comedian." I winked at her. That was just the warm-up. The real drama starts later. The restaurant I chose was a very discreet, private dining club. The environment was quiet and the food exquisite. Its only flaw was the price tag. Once seated at the table, Cedric naturally took the chair next to Yvonne and began weaving tales of his years abroad. He meandered from the shifting tides of the financial markets to charming anecdotes about skiing in Switzerland. He was a silver-tongued orator, artfully sprinkling in his successes and refined tastes while skillfully guiding Yvonne down memory lane. Do you remember? We used to love that library cafe behind the campus gate, he reminisced. We'd sit there all afternoon. I still carry the fountain pen you gave me back then. Just like that, He began silently constructing an invisible wall between us. Inside that wall were the golden years of his youth with Yvonne. Outside was me, the awkward interloper. Yvonne looked increasingly uncomfortable. She tried several times to pull the conversation back toward me, but Cedric deftly steered it away every time. As for me, I didn't interrupt. I just sat there in tranquil silence, listening with a smile. As I listened, I kept busy. I picked up the shrimp she loved, peeled them, dipped them in the sauce, and placed them in her bowl. I ladled out the soup she liked, blew on it to cool it down, and handed it to her. My actions were fluid and effortless, as if performed 1,000 times before. Cedric's animated storytelling gradually slowed. His gaze began to drift unconsciously toward the way I was looking after Yvonne. The superiority in his eyes slowly morphed into a bewildered scrutiny. He likely couldn't fathom how a woman as proud and independent as Yvonne could so contentedly bask in such meticulous care from a man. Finally, when a rich, ingredient-heavy dish was served, Cedric found a topic he thought could turn the tide. He pointed at the soup and said to Yvonne, "I remember your stomach used to be quite sensitive. You should avoid things this greasy." Then, he looked at me with the patronizing tone of a superior. "Thomas, Yvonne's health requires careful management. You really can't be this careless with her diet." And there it was. The battlefield of men had finally opened up. Yvonne was just about to offer an explanation, but I placed my hand over hers and gave Cedric a receptive, appreciative smile. "You're absolutely right, Cedric. In this regard, I really haven't done well enough. I'll certainly pay closer attention from now on." My mouth said one thing, but my hands didn't stop. I took a spoon and precisely fished out specific ingredients from the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. I placed the sea cucumber, flower mushrooms, and quail eggs into Yvonne's bowl, then pushed the remaining broth back toward the center of the table. "My Yvonne's stomach is indeed a bit weak," I noted. "The abalone and pork tendon in this dish would be too hard for her to digest. But the sea cucumber and mushrooms are nutritious and easy to absorb. These quail eggs have been slow braised in chicken broth until they melt in your mouth. Perfect for her. So she eats the essence of the dish, and I'll take care of the heavy, greasy leftovers." As I spoke, I casually scraped half of my rice into the remaining broth, mixing it thoroughly and eating with genuine relish. This really is delicious. "Cedric, you should have some more. Don't be shy." My practiced movements and the satisfied expression of a professional home cook left Cedric dazed. His carefully prepared display of concern, backed by his medical knowledge, had been neutralized by my down-to-earth, everyday, and undeniable approach. He could say I didn't understand finance or art, but he couldn't say I didn't understand Yvonne. Every word I spoke and every move I made broadcasted one clear message. I know her better than you ever did. Yvonne kept her head down, nibbling on the food in her bowl, but the slight upward curve of her lips and the faint flush on her ears gave her away. This round, I won again. The meal concluded in an atmosphere that was harmoniously polite on the surface, but riddled with unspoken barbs. When it came time for the bill, Cedric predictably stood up and reached for his wallet. "Let me take care of this today. Consider it my treat for my own welcome-back dinner." This was his final and most direct attempt at a power play, using money to showcase his success and generosity. Naturally, I didn't fight him for it. I just sat back, slowly sipping my tea, and watched him walk toward the reception desk. Then, I saw the receptionist offer him a polite smile. "Sir, this lady has already settled the bill." She pointed toward Yvonne, who had used the excuse of a restroom break to pay the check. Cedric stood frozen, wallet in hand, his face a kaleidoscope of emotions. This was likely the first time he had encountered a woman who insisted on paying before he could, especially a first love whom he desperately wanted to impress with his status. Yvonne walked over, tucked her arm back into mine, and smiled at him. "I said we were welcoming you back. How could I let you pay? Next time it's definitely on you." That "next time" sounded both polite and infinitely distant. On the drive back, Cedric sat in the rear seat, not uttering a single word the entire way. The air in the car felt heavy. I caught a glimpse of him in a rearview mirror. This golden boy was leaning against the window, watching the city lights blur past with a look of profound loneliness on his face. Meanwhile, my wife, sitting in the passenger seat, secretly reached over to interlace her fingers with mine. I could feel the warmth of her palm, as steady and reassuring as my own. After dropping Cedric off, Yvonne and I headed home, both tacitly agreeing not to mention him again. Life went on. I researched my recipes, and she stayed busy with her projects. A few days later, Yvonne's best friend, Bianca, famously known as the gossip compass of our social circle, gave me a call. As soon as I picked up, her loud, energetic voice filled the room. "Thomas, you've got a heart of steel. Cedric is back, and you're acting like absolutely nothing is happening." I hit the speakerphone and set the mobile aside, continuing to scale and to get a fresh fish I just bought. "And why shouldn't I?" I asked, amused. "What should I do? Run over to him and engage in some primal duel between men? Or go home and throw a crying fit with Yvonne?" My response left Bianca momentarily speechless. "I'm worried about you. Do you have any idea what people are saying out there?" she sputtered. "They're saying Cedric is back to reclaim Yvonne, and that you're nothing more than a placeholder." "A placeholder?" I narrow my eyes. "That's a fresh one." "Well, this placeholder of mine is pretty durable. It's been 3 years, after all." "Thomas," Bianca's voice jumped an octave. "Do you not feel any sense of crisis at all? This is Cedric we're talking about. Back in the day, Yvonne did so much for him. So what if she did?" I cut her off. The knife in my hand came down with a firm thud, severing the fish's head. The sound wasn't loud, but it was decisive. "Bianca, the past is the past. Yvonne is my wife now, and I am her husband. That is enough." Silence fell on the other end of the line. I could perfectly imagine Bianca's jaw dropping. I let out a soft sigh, my voice mellowing. "I know you mean well, but you have to trust Yvonne and trust the bond we share. We aren't made of paper. We don't just blow away with the first gust of wind. Now, no more buts." I placed the cleaned fish on a plate, marinating it with ginger and scallions. "If you truly want the best for us, stop entertaining these baseless rumors. Instead of that, think about what you want to eat next time you come over for dinner. I want that sweet and sour pork you made last time." Bianca's voice finally softened. "Got it. I'm hanging up now. I'm busy." I ended the call and turned around, only to find Yvonne leaning against the kitchen doorframe. She had her arms crossed, watching me with a mischievous glint in her eyes. "Feeling quite powerful today, aren't we, Mr. Thomas?" she teased, even putting my best friend in her place. I wiped my hands, stepped over, and wrapped my arms around her from behind, resting my chin on her shoulder. Of course, who told her to talk trash about me and try to rattle my nerves? I had to let her know who really has the final say in this house. I nuzzled her neck, making her giggle as she squirmed. Yes, you have the final say, the great hero of our family." She turned around in my arms, cupping my face and looking me straight in the eyes with a sudden seriousness. "Thomas, thank you." "For what?" "For trusting me so completely." Looking into the light in her eyes, my heart melted. I leaned down and kissed her forehead. "Silly girl. If I don't trust you, who can I trust?" Just as the moment was getting tender, my phone rang at the most inconvenient time. I picked it up to see 4 words on the screen: "Beloved mother-in-law." Yvonne and I exchanged a look, both sensing a flicker of unease. Sure enough, as soon as I answered, her panicked voice came through. "Thomas, are you and Yvonne free? Get over here to the house immediately. Something terrible has happened." My heart tightened. For a woman as composed as my mother-in-law to say, "Something terrible has happened," it was definitely no small matter. Yvonne and I didn't dare hesitate. We dropped everything and drove straight to her parents' house. As soon as we stepped inside, we saw my parents-in-law sitting stiffly on the sofa, their expressions tight with tension. On the coffee table lay a hospital appointment slip. "Dad, Mom, what's wrong?" "Who's sick?" Yvonne asked, her voice laced with worry. My mother-in-law remained silent, merely pointing at the slip while looking at me with an incredibly complex gaze. "Thomas," she started, taking a deep breath as if she had finally steeled her resolve. "I know asking you to do this might feel like an insult, but for Yvonne's happiness and for the sake of this family, you must go through with this test." I picked up the slip and was instantly stunned. It read clearly, "Comprehensive Male Fertility Evaluation." "Mom, Dad, what on earth are you doing?" Yvonne demanded, her voice rising in anger. My father-in-law tapped his tobacco pipe against the table and spoke in a low, gravelly voice. "Yvonne, Don't get worked up. Your mother had no choice. That Cedric fellow is back, and the rumors are flying everywhere. It's unbearable to listen to. You and Thomas have been married for 3 years now, and yet there's no news from your belly. We're starting to wonder if there's a health issue involved. My mother-in-law chimed in. Exactly. If the two of you had a child, then no matter what outsiders say, our hearts would be at peace. No matter how successful Cedric is, could he really snatch away a woman who is already a mother? I understood then. These two parents have been completely rattled by Cedric's return. Yvonne's face went pale with indignation. Dad, Mom, how could you think like that? What does Thomas have to do with him? We don't have a child because we agreed we wanted to enjoy our lives as a couple for a few more years. That's just an excuse. My mother-in-law slapped her thigh. Yvonne, stop defending him. Men, sometimes they have issues that are hard to talk about. Thomas, be honest with me. Is it? I looked at my mother-in-law's eyes, cautious yet filled with expectation. I looked at my father-in-law, who had a "this is all for your own good" expression. Then I looked at Yvonne, who was practically vibrating with rage. Suddenly, I found the whole situation a bit hysterical. I cleared my throat, pulled Yvonne behind me to protect her, and flashed a smile that was the very definition of the dutiful son-in-law. Mom, Dad, I understand your concerns. I took the appointment slip and solemnly tucked it into my pocket. I will go for the checkup. Yvonne stomped her foot behind me in protest. I turned back, signaling her to stay calm, and continued addressing her parents. But I have one condition. Before the test results are in, you aren't allowed to give Yvonne a hard time because of Cedric's return. No more overthinking. Just relax and wait for my results, all right? My tone was calm and sincere, possessing a quiet strength that made it impossible to refuse. The two parents hesitated for a moment before finally nodding. Fine, we agree. Then it settled. I smiled, taking Yvonne's hand. Mom, Dad, if there's nothing else, we'll head out now. Oh, that's right. Mom, remember to drink that soup. I sent over a pot of fresh black-bone chicken stew this afternoon. It's great for getting a good night's sleep. With that, I pulled a still-fuming Yvonne out of the house. The moment we stepped into the car, she swiped my hand away. Thomas, you're insane. How could you agree to such an absurd request? This is an insult to you. Looking at her furious expression, I couldn't help but reach out and pinch her cheek. Don't be mad. You aren't as pretty when you're angry. You're still laughing. Yvonne swatted my hand away again. Do you have any idea how out of line they're being? I know, I said, my smile fading as I looked at her seriously. I know they're crossing a line, and I know it hurts you to see me treated this way. But Yvonne, have you thought about why they're doing this? Yvonne froze. Because they're afraid. I started the engine and slowly pulled out of the neighborhood. They're afraid of losing you. They're afraid the happiness you have now is just a fleeting illusion. Cedric's reappearance has magnified that fear. It's not that they don't trust you, or even that they don't trust me. It's just that they love you too much. I continued. They're using a clumsy, direct, and even slightly hurtful method to find an answer that will give them peace of mind. I'm going through with this test, not because I have anything to hide and not to prove anything to them. I just want my actions to show them that their son-in-law is healthy, mentally strong, and more than capable of giving their daughter a lifetime of happiness. I want them to finally be at ease. The car fell silent, save for the low hum of the engine. Yvonne stared at me, her eyes slowly reddening. Thomas, she sniffled. Did I save the entire Milky Way in a past life to end up with you? I reached out with one hand and ruffled her hair. No, I must have saved the entire universe in my past life to marry you. I looked at the busy road ahead, a subtle smile playing on my lips. Cedric, you probably think I'm your opponent, but you're wrong. Your opponent is US. It's this unbreakable circle of love and trust. And you haven't even found the door yet. On the day of the checkup, I went alone. I didn't let Yvonne come with me. This was a man's business. There was no need to make a scene of being worried. The hospital was bustling, filled with the sharp scent of disinfectant. I held my appointment slip and navigated the familiar halls to the andrology department. The doctor was a middle-aged man with a Mediterranean-style bald spot and a very gentle demeanor. He reviewed my slip, pushed up his glasses, and appraised me from head to toe. You look like a healthy young man, he noted. Why the checkup? Having trouble conceiving? I smiled, offering a half-truth. Not exactly. My parents-in-law are just a bit anxious for a grandchild. They insisted I come get checked out just so they can sleep at night. The doctor nodded in understanding. That's how people are these days. I get it. What followed was a series of procedures, blood work, and tests. A tedious, almost mundane process. While waiting for the results, I sat on a hallway bench, scrolling through my phone. Yvonne sent me a message. "How's it going? Are you nervous?" I replied, terrified. I was so nervous, I just had to eat 2 extra pork buns. She sent back a string of ellipses followed by a laughing while crying emoji. "Tell me the results as soon as they're out." "As you command, my lady." Tucking my phone away, I boredly observed the people around me. There were young men there alone like me, faces etched with embarrassment and anxiety. There were also couples. The wives offered gentle comfort, while the husbands kept their heads bowed in silence. Life truly is a kaleidoscope of struggles. Just as my mind began to wander, a familiar figure flashed past. I looked closer and froze. Cedric. What was he doing here? He was walking briskly, wearing a mask and a hat pulled low, completely covered up. He headed straight into a different clinic. I glanced at the sign above the door, neurology and psychiatry. A flicker of doubt rose in my mind. What was he seeing a neurologist for? Insomnia from jet lag, perhaps? The thought crossed my mind, but was quickly discarded. Other people's private business didn't interest me. An hour later, I received my report. I didn't bother reading the details. I just stuffed it into my pocket and drove straight to my parents-in-law's house. The 2 elders had clearly been waiting for a long time. The moment I stepped inside, they rushed to meet me, their eyes filled with tension and anticipation. "Thomas, well, what's the result?" My mother-in-law's voice trembled slightly. I didn't say a word. I simply pulled the reports from my pocket and handed them over. My father-in-law put on his reading glasses, his hands shaking as he took them. My mother-in-law leaned in close, their heads huddled together as they scrutinized every technical term and data point. "This, 100% motility, what does that mean? Is a 98% normal morphology rate high?" Then they reached the doctor's summary. All indices far exceed normal standards. Can be considered a model specimen. The air in the room seemed to freeze. My father-in-law slowly looked up, took off his glasses, and stared at me as if I were an alien. My mother-in-law was even more dramatic. Her jaw literally dropped. The report slipped from her hand and hit the floor with a soft thud. She looked at the paper, then back at me. The emotion in her eyes shifted from shock to bewilderment, and finally into an indescribable sense of joy and pride. Oh my goodness. She clutched her chest, too agitated to speak clearly. "Thomas, your health? It's incredible." My father-in-law stood there with a look of pure disbelief. He cleared his throat, trying to maintain his dignity as the head of the household, but the grin spreading across his face was impossible to hide. Ahem. Not bad. Not bad at all. Truly worthy of the son-in-law I handpicked. "Dad, I'm pretty sure that wasn't your attitude toward me before." Yvonne stood beside me, her expression a mix of laughter and disbelief. She probably hadn't expected a routine health report to deliver such a massive shock to her parents. That was it. The giant boulder in their hearts hadn't just been lifted, it had been pulverized. My mother-in-law snapped back to reality and lunged forward to grab my hands. Her enthusiasm was 100 times more intense than when Yvonne first brought me home to meet them. "Good son-in-law, you truly are Mama's good son-in-law." As she spoke, she patted my arm with her other hand. Her eyes were filled with the sheer satisfaction of a mother-in-law looking at her prized son-in-law. The more she looked, the more pleased she became. I knew it. How could my Yvonne's judgment be wrong? Just look at this physique, this vitality, one glance, and you can tell he's a man destined for greatness. I was praised to the point of genuine embarrassment. Haha, Mom, you're exaggerating. Not at all. Absolutely not. She waved her hand, her aura heroic and grand. From today onward, I'm taking over all 3 meals for your household. You don't need to do a thing. Just keep your strength up for me. Stay healthy, stay vigorous, and let's work hard. Work hard, give me a grandchild to hold by next year. The turn of events seemed to be spiraling a bit beyond my expectations. I only wanted them to be at ease. I didn't want them to immediately shift into a full-scale pregnancy mobilization mode. That night, I was treated like royalty. Dinner featured a 10-ingredients great tonic soup handmade by my mother-in-law, and dessert was imported kiwi personally peeled by my father-in-law. By the time we left, my mother-in-law had packed my trunk with every kind of tonic she had suddenly purchased. Cordyceps, wild sea cucumbers, so much of it that I suspected she cleaned out the entire traditional pharmacy. Looking at the mountain of love in the trunk, Yvonne and I looked at each other, both seeing a mix of helplessness and hilarity. "Congratulations, Mr. Thomas." Yvonne leaned against the car door, teasing me. "You've successfully upgraded to the primary protected species of our family." I sighed, starting the car with a look of mock resignation. I have a feeling my days ahead won't be easy. I could already foresee the terror of being dominated daily by tonic soups and my mother-in-law's expectant gaze. However, seeing Yvonne beside me laughing so hard she was trembling, I felt it was all worth it. Since that model specimen report appeared, my status in my in-laws' house had undergone a seismic shift. Before, the way they looked at me was, this guy treats our daughter well enough. Now, the way they looked at me was, good heavens, this is our family's mobile treasure. The most direct manifestation was that my mother-in-law had completely taken over my kitchen. She rotated dishes every day to cook for me under the guise of nutritional supplementation, leaving me, the self-proclaimed house husband, completely unemployed. My biggest mission every day was figuring out how to finish all the meals delivered with such overwhelming affection. Yvonne took great pleasure in my predicament. More than once, she patted my increasingly rounded stomach, teasing me. "Mr. Thomas, at this rate, you're going to go from a model specimen to a model of obesity. Specifically, an overweight model." I could only offer a helpless protest. As for Cedric, my parents-in-law completely stopped mentioning him. It was as if the man had never existed. Occasionally, an oblivious relative would bring him up during family gathering, mentioning that Cedric had started his own investment firm, a young and talented entrepreneur, and wanted to propose a collaborative project with Yvonne. My mother-in-law didn't even bother to lift her eyelids. She casually placed a piece of food into my bowl and said, "There's no need for any collaboration. Our Yvonne is far too busy. She doesn't have the time. Besides, our family has much more important matters to attend to right now." The relative asked curiously, "What matters?" My mother-in-law glanced at me with a mysterious smile. "That is the top secret priority of our family." I can't say. The relative, feeling slighted, fell silent while I sat there under the family's knowing grins, quietly taking another bite of rice. This feeling of being treated like a secret weapon was truly strange. Just when I thought life would continue in this warm and humorous atmosphere, Cedric made another move. This time, he didn't resort to petty tricks like gifts or accidental run-ins. He struck directly at my area of expertise. One day, I received a call from an unknown number. "Am I speaking with Mr. Thomas?" The voice on the other end was professional and polite. "This is he. May I ask who is calling?" "I am the assistant to the chairman of Spirit Capital. My name is Mr. Wong. It's like this. Our company is organizing a very high-end commercial gala. We were hoping to invite a top-tier private chef to oversee the design and preparation of the entire menu. We've heard that you're known as the cinematic god of cookery in culinary circles, so we're reaching out to see if you'd be interested in taking on this event." The cinematic god of cookery? I narrow my eyes. Spirit Capital was exactly the firm Cedric had founded after returning to the country. It turned out he wanted to strike me where I was strongest, the place I took the most pride in, to give me a crushing blow. This Mr. Wong was a smooth talker, throwing around titles like God of Cookery that I'd never even heard attributed to me. They had clearly done their homework. They knew that while I didn't work in a commercial restaurant, my culinary skills were recognized as elite within our private circles. Cedric's plan was sophisticated. If I refused, he could tell everyone that the so-called God of Cookery was a fraud who didn't even dare to handle a high-end gala. It would be a blow to my confidence and reputation. If I accepted, he would be my client. He could impose impossible, even absurd demands at every stage of the gala. He could criticize the food and belittle my service in front of all the distinguished guests. At that point, the God of Cookery would be humiliated on a stage he painstakingly built, and Yvonne would see her proud husband looking pathetic in front of everyone. It truly was a move that killed without shedding blood. I could almost picture Cedric's calm, confident face on the other end of the line, certain that he held all the winning cards. Unfortunately, he miscalculated one thing. This Thomas likes nothing more than shredding a script prepared by someone else. I let out a soft chuckle into the phone. Assistant Wong, first of all, thank you for your company's high appraisal. But that title, Cinematic God of Cookery, is a bit much. I'm just an ordinary man who enjoys cooking. I paused, then shifted my tone. However, I am indeed interested in this gala. I just have my own set of rules. Please go ahead. We're listening. Wong's attitude remained remarkably respectful. First, the menu is decided solely by me. The client is not allowed to offer any input. I will provide the best pairings based on the gala's theme and the guest's dietary restrictions. Second, I have full authority over the kitchen, from sourcing ingredients to hiring staff. The client is not to interfere. Third, and most importantly, I emphasize my voice. My service fee is very high. The other end went silent. I leisurely stated a figure. It was a number that would make any executive chef at a five-star hotel look up and sigh in envy. Assistant Wong was clearly staggered by the amount. He sucked in a cold breath. Mr. Thomas, this price. I smiled. Assistant Wong should know that a craftsman, especially a top-tier one, cannot be measured by money alone. I'm not quoting this because my work is worth that amount, but because my time is only valued at that price. Of course, you're free to refuse. After all, in this city, there are countless chefs who know how to cook. You don't lack for options. Having said my piece, I prepared to hang up. I knew Cedric would agree. He hadn't set this trap to save pennies. He had set it to humiliate me. If he let this opportunity slip just to save money, his goal would go unfulfilled. He was now riding a tiger. It's hard to get off. Sure enough, just as my finger was about to hit the end call button, Wong's hurried voice came through. Wait, Mr. Thomas, don't hang up. I need to seek instructions from our chairman. Fine. I gave him a way out. I'll wait 10 minutes. If I don't hear from you by then, this collaboration is over. I hung up, tossed the phone aside, and went back to inspecting my succulent. Yvonne walked out of her study and poured me a glass of water. Was that Cedric's company? She had clearly overheard the conversation. I nodded. MHM. It seems Cedric isn't ready to throw in the towel just yet. And yet you still agree? Yvonne's brows knit together, her eyes reflecting an unconcealed worry. He definitely doesn't have good intentions. I know, I said, pulling her down onto the sofa and into my arms. Don't you worry. Has your husband ever been the one to get the short end of the stick? I pinched her nose and smiled. He wants to defeat me on my own home turf. We'll just have to see if he has the skills to back it up. Besides, I want to show him clearly that the wealth and status he's so proud of aren't worth a dime in my eyes. My phone rang exactly at the 8-minute mark. It was Assistant Wong again. Mr. Thomas, our chairman has agreed to all of your conditions, he said, his voice laced with a palpable sense of pain and reluctant resignation. Excellent. I stood up and walked out onto the balcony, looking down at the bustling traffic below. My voice was calm and confident, looking forward to a successful collaboration. After the call, I turned back to find Yvonne standing in the middle of the living room watching me, her eyes sparkling like they were full of starlight. Hubby, she said, give me a big thumbs up. You are so cool. I laughed. Being called cool by my wife felt better than earning any amount of money. Cedric, I've accepted your challenge. I just wonder, when the night of the gala comes, who will be the one truly losing face? The Cinematic God of Cookery commercial gala was held in the top-floor ballroom of a five-star hotel. Cedric had spared no expense, booking almost the entire floor. On the day of the event, I arrived at the kitchen with my team at 5 p.m. My crew consisted of no outsiders. They were all longtime friends who shared a fanatical passion for food. A master noodle maker hidden in the back alleys, a pastry chef who graduated from a top culinary institute, and a sourcing specialist so fastidious about ingredients it bordered on obsessive. To a casual observer, we looked like a band of drifters. But the moment we assembled and stepped into a kitchen, we became an invincible army. The hotel's banquet manager initially tried to direct our work, but I gave him a single cold glare that forced him to either shut up or back away. I wasn't joking. In my kitchen, I am the only king. Assistant Wong, representing the client, shadowed us the entire time. Several times he tried to creep closer to peek at the menu or the prep stations, but he was politely blocked by my 1.9-meter tall, heavily bearded sourcing specialist. Apologies, Mr. Wong, But our Mr. Thomas does not like to be disturbed while working, the bearded giant said in a deep, warm voice, wearing a deceptively kind smile. Thwarted, Assistant Wong could only retreat awkwardly to a corner, furiously texting someone on his phone. I ignored him, my entire focus poured into the premium ingredients before me. Australian Wagyu, French blue lobsters, Italian white truffles, and wild mushrooms flown in from Yunnan, still carrying the scent of morning dew. These were items I had tasked my specialist to hunt down from every corner of the globe, using every connection he had. Since Cedric wanted to use money to defeat me, I would show him a level of refinement that money alone could never truly buy. At exactly 7 p.m., the gala began. The guests filed in, dressed in their finest, the wealthy and powerful, the titans of the Haicheng business world. Through a crack in the kitchen door, I spotted Yvonne. Tonight, she wore a long black gown, her hair swept up to reveal her elegant neck and stunning shoulders. She wore no extravagant jewelry, only a pair of small, simple pearl earrings. She seemed to radiate light, glowing brilliantly in the crowd, surrounded by business partners while handling every conversation with poise and confidence. Cedric, as the host, was naturally the centerpiece of the ballroom. Holding a wine glass, he glided between guests with polished elegance, exuding the charm of a successful man. Occasionally, his gaze would drift toward Yvonne, his must-win determination unconcealed. He also glanced toward the kitchen, a cold smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. He likely believed his plan was proceeding perfectly. But very soon, he would realize just how wrong he was. The first course was the appetizer. I didn't opt for traditional, floury Western dishes. Instead, I served consommé with poached egg, styled after the legendary steamed Chinese cabbage and supreme soup. When the servers placed the crystal-clear broth, looking as transparent as plain water, onto the tables, the entire ballroom fell silent for a moment. Many guests looked perplexed. Is this the dish from the legendary god of cookery, who charges such a sky-high fee? A bowl of boiled water with an egg. Just as I thought, a smile flickered across Cedric's face. He was just about to speak to steer the public opinion when an elderly man with silver hair, sitting at the head table, suddenly spoke up. An exquisite consommé. The broth looks like water without a trace of grease, yet the aroma is complex and hits you right in the soul. This level of stock making requires decades of mastery. It is absolutely impossible to replicate without true kung fu. This old gentleman was a monument in the Haicheng culinary world, the patriarch of a prestigious legacy brand. Coming from him, the words carried a different weight. Everyone fell silent, picking up their spoons to take a careful sip. A second later, muffled gasps of astonishment rippled through the hall. Is this really soup? How can it be this sweet and savory? How is this egg prepared? It melts in the mouth, leaving a clean, sweet aftertaste. Cedric's smile froze. He hadn't expected someone so knowledgeable to be among his invited guests. A single sentence had completely flipped the narrative. Lord Vicente set his spoon down, his eyes burning with curiosity as he looked toward the kitchen. He asked loudly, I wonder which master is the head chef? Could they come out so we may meet them? Assistant Wong's face turned ghastly. He hurried to Cedric's side and whispered a few words. Cedric's expression darkened instantly. I didn't go out. Instead, I gave the order to my team through the intercom, serve the main course. The second dish was an Asian Western fusion, M12 Wagyu with white truffle. The Australian Wagyu was cut into perfect cubes and seared instantly at high temperature to lock in the juices, then paired with Italian Alba white truffles shaved fresh at the table. When the cloches were lifted, a powerful aroma immediately dominated the ballroom. The scent, a blend of brown butter and the exotic earthy musk of the truffles, made everyone involuntarily saloon. My God, it's Alba white truffle! A young man who looked like a wealthy socialite exclaimed in shock. The yield this year is incredibly low. You can't buy this even if you have the money. And the doneness of this beef, it's controlled perfectly. A second longer and it would be tough. A second less and it would be raw. The guests' praises were like resounding slaps across Cedric's face. The gala he had so painstakingly arranged had completely transformed into my personal stage. He had essentially become the patron saint of fools, paying an exorbitant sum to hire me just so I could teach all of his most important business partners a lesson in excellence. I could only imagine his state of mind. It was undoubtedly darker than the black pepper sauce on the plates. As for me, I was leisurely enjoying a bowl of beef noodle soup, extra brisket, heavy on the scallions and fatty broth, freshly prepared in the kitchen. It was a special bowl made just for me by my master noodle maker. Delicious. The best way to defeat someone isn't through a war of words. It's by crushing them in the field they take the most pride in, using a level of mastery they can't even fathom. Cedric thought he could control everything with money and status, but he failed to realize that some things simply cannot be bought, like genuine passion and decades of artisanal dedication. The gala pressed on, each dish unfolding like a masterpiece in an art gallery, presented with absolute perfection. There was a molecular gastronomy egg with a mango yolk center, lobsters treated with a precision sous vide technique to keep the meat tender and retain its primal sweetness. The final dessert, I named Flowers in the Moonlight. It was a hollow sphere, thin as a cicada's wing, crafted from pulled sugar and containing dry ice and osmanthus-flavored ice cream. When the servers used tiny hammers to tap it lightly, a white mist swirled out alongside the scent of osmanthus, as ethereal and fleeting as a dream. The entire ballroom erupted. Every single person stood up, applauding this final work of art. Camera flashes strobed incessantly as guests pulled out their phones to capture the moment of awe. Lord Vicente was so moved his face turned a deep crimson. He gripped Cedric's hand and shouted, "Mr. Cedric, this time you have brought a literal god of the culinary world to me, to all of Haicheng. This Mr. Thomas is an absolute grandmaster. No matter how much you paid to bring him here, it was worth it. More than worth it." Cedric's face was beyond ugly at this point. It was a kaleidoscope of shock, rage, humiliation, and profound defeat. He probably never imagined his wildest dreams that the public shaming he'd so carefully orchestrated would turn into a divine coronation for me. He looked at the guests he had intended to impress with his connections and status. Now, they were all my fans, each one scrambling for a way to contact me for a private booking. He looked at Yvonne, the woman he so desperately longed for, standing in the crowd with a smile of unshielded pride and joy, a smile more brilliant than the crystal chandeliers overhead. Finally, he understood. He had lost, completely and utterly. As the gala ended and the guests departed with lingering regret, I told my team to pack up and head out first. I stayed behind alone to handle the final walkthrough. Changing out of my chef's whites, I stepped out of the kitchen. Only Cedric remained in the ballroom. He sat at the head of the table, the lights dimmed, with the bustling neon nightscape of Haicheng shimmering through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind him. His silhouette looked profoundly lonely in the dark. Hearing the sound of my footsteps, he didn't turn around. "You knew all along, didn't you?" His voice was incredibly hoarse. "Knew what?" I walked over to the seat opposite him and poured myself a glass of water. "You knew my plan. You've been playing me the whole time." "I wouldn't call it playing you." I took a sip of water, soothing a throat that had been busy directing a kitchen all night. "I was simply doing my job. You're the one who overthinks things." He spun around abruptly, staring at me with eyes shot through with blood vessels. "Who are you, really? You're nowhere near as simple as you pretend to be. How can a mere house husband have this kind of culinary skill? These kinds of connections?" "I'm just an ordinary man who loves to cook." I looked at him and answered with total sincerity. "I just put in a little more heart than most people do." "I don't believe you," he growled like a cornered beast. "You're definitely faking this innocence to deceive people. You must have some ulterior motive for approaching Yvonne." Looking at him in this state, I felt a pang of pity. "Cedric," I set the glass down, my voice steady. "You're wrong. You've been wrong from the very start." I continued, "You always assume Yvonne chose me because I have some extraordinary background or because I use some underhanded tactic. But you never consider the possibility that she chose me simply because I am me. She doesn't need a man to provide her with money or status. She can earn those things herself. What she needs is someone who can provide warmth, companionship, and someone who can cook her a bowl of hot noodles on a rainy night. Someone who can see through her strength and understand all her vulnerabilities. And I just happen to be that man. It's as simple as that." My words were like a stake driven through his heart. He stared at me blankly, his lips trembling, but not a single word came out. He had treated love like a commercial chess match of equal powers. He calculated gains and losses, weighed pros and cons, but forgot the core of love: emotion, presence, and the tiny, warm details that cannot be measured by wealth or rank. But Yvonne is your past now. I stood up, preparing to leave. A person can't live in the past forever. Look forward. It's better for both you and her. I reached the door, and just as my hand touched the handle, Yvonne pushed it open from the outside. She had clearly been worried and was waiting for me. Sensing the heavy tension in the room, she immediately moved to my side and tucked her arm into mine. She didn't even look at Cedric. She only spoke to me. "Let's go home, Thomas." "All right," I nodded. The two of us turned, shoulder to shoulder, and started to walk out. "Yvonne," Cedric suddenly called out behind us. We stopped, but we didn't turn back. Do you actually love him?" he asked, his voice carrying the final, desperate echo of his dissatisfaction. Yvonne fell silent for a moment. Then, she turned her head back towards Cedric and spoke with absolute clarity and conviction. "Cedric, meeting him is the greatest blessing of my life." Having said her piece, she didn't linger. She pulled me out of the ballroom and into the brilliant city night. I knew that from this moment on, the name Cedric would be permanently struck from our lives with a final period. The story of Yvonne and me, however, was only just beginning. The legend of Cedric's commercial gala became a hot topic of conversation among the elite circles of Haicheng. The protagonist of the tale wasn't the newly crowned god of cookery, but rather the chairman of Spirit Capital, who had lost both the bait and the fish. Rumor had it that the gala, intended to make a splash for his new firm, backfired completely. Because the food was so mind-blowing, the guests ignored the business agenda entirely. The whole city was talking about how delicious the meal was and who the chef could be. In fact, several investors who were initially prepared to partner with Cedric spent the aftermath trying to contact me to book private dinners. Their logic was bizarre. They figured that a man who could spend money on something as frivolous as dining with such exquisite taste was clearly a person worth befriending deeply. I didn't accept any of those invitations. Instead, I forwarded all inquiries to my sourcing specialist, the bearded giant, who had taken on the additional role of my manager. He publicly announced that Mr. Thomas is fully booked until the end of next year, which only made the wealthy socialites even more desperate to get on the list. As for me, I returned to my life as a house husband. The only small change was that my father-in-law had officially become my #1 fan. Since the gala, the way he looked at me had shifted from admiration to outright worship. Now, he bragged about me to everyone he met. "My Thomas? You have no idea. He's a hidden dragon. That gala? TSK, state banquet level." He even gifted me a precious Zisha teapot he'd kept in his collection for years, under the pretense of giving a legendary sword to a true hero. It left me between tears and laughter. I just know how to cook. How did I become a hero? Soon after came my father-in-law's 60th birthday. Yvonne and I prepared everything well in advance. It was another opportunity for someone like Cedric to try and steal the spotlight, but I was determined not to give him the chance. As the birthday celebration officially began, the 16 courses I prepared were served one after another, each eliciting a chorus of small gasps. These lion's head meatballs are rich, but not greasy. They melt in the mouth. Simply superb. This peacock-style steamed fish is not only stunning to look at, but the flavor is incredibly fresh. Thomas, with talent like this, it's a crime that you don't open a restaurant. The praise was relentless. Mr. Liu, my father-in-law, sat at the head of the table, his face glowing with such radiance he looked ready to float to the heavens. He raised his wine glass, soaking up the flattery from his old friends with an air of triumph, as if he had personally cooked every single dish. "Oh, it's nothing, really nothing," he said modestly, though the pride in his eyes was impossible to hide. "My son-in-law just happens to have this little hobby, that's all." I moved back and forth between the kitchen and the dining room, ensuring every dish was presented to the guests at its absolute peak. Yvonne followed close behind, helping me carry the platters. She was like a diligent little bee. The unspoken chemistry and intimacy between us was something no words could ever fully describe. Cedric sat in a corner, silently watching it all. The food in front of him remained almost untouched, his expression souring further with every word of praise from the guests. He likely couldn't comprehend why a prestigious painting he had spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on could lose out to a table full of ordinary home-cooked dishes. He didn't understand that for a family, the most precious things aren't measured in currency. They are found in the bustling warmth of a household and the cozy glow of loved ones gathered under one roof. After 3 rounds of drinks and 5 courses, the atmosphere became even more electric. An old comrade of Mr. Liu, my father-in-law, having had a bit too much to drink, slammed the table and shouted, "Liu, the most successful investment of your life wasn't that company of yours. It was finding a son-in-law like this. Right you are. With a son-in-law like him, you could just sit back and enjoy the rest of your life in bliss. Come on, everyone, let's raise a glass. Let's thank Thomas for preparing such a magnificent spread for us." Everyone stood up in unison, raising their glasses toward me. I was caught off guard and quickly raised my teacup. Uncles, aunts, you're far too kind. Seeing everyone enjoy the meal is the greatest compliment I could ask for. Just as the celebration reached its crescendo, an abrasive voice cut through the air. "Is a mere table of food enough to buy everyone off?" It was Cedric. He stood up, a mocking smirk etched on his face. Thomas's cooking is indeed not bad, but if a man only knows how to loiter in the kitchen, how is he any different from an Annie? His words were like a bucket of ice water, instantly dousing the lively atmosphere. His assistant tugged at his sleeve, but it was too late. Mr. Liu's face turned as black as the bottom of a charred pot. He slammed his wine glass onto the table with a resonant thud. Yvonne stood up as well, her gaze icy as she looked at Cedric. "Cedric, please watch your tongue." But Cedric acted as if he didn't even hear her. He walked straight up to me, his sharp eyes locking onto mine. "Thomas, I admit I underestimated you. You're very good at pleasing people, very good at using these petty favors to win hearts. But what does Yvonne actually get by staying with you? She is a woman who should be standing on top of the world, not wasting her talent and her life in a kitchen." This time, I returned to found Spirit Capital. Within 3 months, we will complete our series of funding with a valuation exceeding $10 billion. I can provide her with the best resources, the broadest platform, so she can become a true queen. And you? What can you give her? A lifetime smelling like cooking oil. His voice was powerful, laced with provocation. As he finished, the living room fell into a deathly silence. Everyone's eyes were fixed on me, some with empathy, some with pity, and others simply waiting for the drama to unfold. They were all waiting to see how I, the house husband, would handle this high-level strike from a corporate elite. I didn't look at him. I simply picked up a wet towel from the table and leisurely wiped my hands. Then, I looked up at Yvonne, who was standing right beside me. "Honey, do you find the smell of cooking oil too pungent?" Yvonne looked at me and suddenly laughed. She laughed so heartily her eyes crinkled like blooming lilies. She shook her head, her voice clear and unwavering. "Not at all." She reached out, adjusted my slightly messy collar, and said softly, "I think it's the most wonderful scent in the world because it's the scent of home." Having said that, she turned her head to look at a pale-faced Cedric. "Cedric, what you're saying sounds very enticing, but perhaps you didn't know my company's net profit in the last quarter's financial report was $15 billion. That platform you mentioned to help me become a queen? I'm sorry, I already have one, and it happens to be much larger and more stable than yours. As for my husband," she turned back, looking at me with pure affection. In front of everyone, she stood on her tiptoes and gave me a gentle kiss on the cheek. "He gives me something that no other man in this world can. He gives me a home where I can drop my guard and simply be myself." Yvonne's words were like iron, each one a bullet hitting Cedric right in the chest. He stood frozen, his face turning ashen. The capital he was so proud of, the rescue he thought he was offering, had become an utter joke in the face of Yvonne's composure. But the show wasn't over yet. Mr. Liu, who had remained silent all this time, finally spoke. He stood up, walked over to me, and gave my shoulder a firm pat. He didn't even look at Cedric. Instead, he addressed all the guests. "Everyone, since it's this old man's birthday today, I have one more thing to announce." He pulled a document from his pocket and opened it for those nearby to see. "This is the contract my Thomas just signed last week. The Michelin Group has officially invited our Thomas to be their global culinary consultant and head of the Asian Selection Committee. His annual salary after taxes is an 8-figure USD sum. Furthermore, the Michelin Group will establish a global culinary fund in Thomas's name to discover and nurture talented young chefs like him. Mr. Liu's voice wasn't loud, but every word was a heavy-duty bomb detonating in the living room. Silence fell once more. Everyone stared at me as if I were a monster, including Yvonne. Her jaw dropped in total disbelief. This was something I hadn't had a chance to tell her yet. Cedric looked as if he had been struck by lightning. He stumbled back 2 steps, muttering under his breath, No, that's impossible. This can't be. Global culinary consultant for Michelin and head of the selection committee for Greater China. Each of these titles represented the very apex of the culinary pyramid. Even a Wall Street financial elite paled in comparison to such prestige, to say nothing of that 8-figure USD salary. The success theory he was so proud of, measured solely by money, had been crushed by me in a manner that was both direct and brutal. Looking at his vacant, dazed expression, I felt no surge of joy. I simply walked up to him and said quietly, Even nannies have their ranks. Without another word, I ignored him and pulled the still stunned Yvonne over to her parents. Dad, Mom, happy birthday. Our family stood close together, and under the gazes of shock, admiration, or envy from the crowd, our smile shone brighter than the sunlight streaming through the windows. I don't know exactly when Cedric left. All I know is that from that day on, the man completely vanished from our world. According to Bianca, he flew back to the States the very next day, leaving even his spirit capital firm in the hands of subordinates. Perhaps he needed time to digest the absolute power levels of the mysterious East that this trip home had forced upon him. Meanwhile, my life was no longer quiet after my father-in-law's grand announcement. My phone nearly exploded. Media outlets, food magazines, and TV stations were all scrambling to interview this rising god of cookery. My manager, that burly, bearded giant, was so busy he barely had time to breathe, yet he wore a grin that stretched from ear to ear. Amidst all the chaos, I made a decision that shocked everyone. I declined all interviews and commercial engagements, including the formal inauguration ceremony Michelin had arranged. My response to the Michelin headquarters was simple. I would accept the consultancy and the committee chair, but I would only work remotely. I would not leave my home, and I would not leave my kitchen. To everyone's surprise, Michelin agreed. They even dispatched a team to fly directly to Haicheng to install a state-of-the-art remote workstation in my villa. And so, I became the first global culinary consultant in Michelin's history to work from home. People thought I was crazy, giving up such a magnificent stage just to stay cooped up in a small family kitchen. Only Yvonne understood. That night, she leaned into my chest and asked, Do you regret it? Giving up the chance to stand at the center of the world's stage. I pinched her nose and smiled. What's so great about the world stage? It doesn't compare to my stage here at home. For me, the most important stage is our little kitchen. The most important audience is you, and the greatest award I can receive is a simple, it's delicious after you take a bite of my food. That's enough for me. She said nothing, only buried her head deeper into my chest. I knew she understood everything. We are the same. What we pursue has never been the fleeting glitz of the outside world, but the most authentic and enduring happiness within. Money, status, fame, we can earn those ourselves. But family, a lover, and the cozy warmth of moments spent together are the only true luxury goods in this world. 6 months later, Yvonne and I returned from the hospital, carrying a new report. On the ultrasound was a tiny silhouette shaped like a little bean sprout. The doctor said, 8 weeks along, and very healthy. We held that fragile piece of paper, staring at each other in the hospital corridor for a long time, before bursting into laughter simultaneously. On the way home, Yvonne carefully tucked the ultrasound into her bag, as if she were guarding a priceless treasure. Hubby, she spoke up suddenly, who do you think the baby will take after more? I thought for a moment and answered seriously, for looks, hopefully you. That way the baby will be beautiful. As for personality, half like you, half like me. Like you, strong and decisive. Like me, well, loving life. What about cooking skills? She pressed. The cooking skills definitely have to come from me, I said grandly. The royal chef tradition of our Soma family cannot be interrupted. She giggled at my antics. Outside the car window, The sunlight was radiant and the days were peaceful. I held the steering wheel, looking at the woman I loved most, this soon-to-be mother, and my heart was flooded with an immense sense of happiness. I suddenly remembered Bianca's question from a long time ago. She had asked, "Your wife's first love is back, aren't you worried?" Now, I could give her a much more precise answer. I wasn't worried. Because when a man truly possesses a moon of his own, why would he care about a so-called first love that faded into someone else's world long ago? Yvonne is my moon, unique, radiant, and brilliant. And I am the astronaut who will forever protect that moon. 1 year later, the venue for Mr. Lou's birthday was still my home, and I was still the head chef. Only this time, there was an extra tiny silhouette in the kitchen. My son, little Soma. He was wearing a mini chef's outfit I had custom-made, topped with a tall chef's hat, pretending to gnaw enthusiastically on a carrot. Yvonne was by his side, wiping the drool off his chin while looking at me helplessly. "Thomas, are you sure you want to start training him now? He hasn't even grown all his teeth yet." I replied with mock seriousness. Of course. The culinary arts of the Soma household must be passed down from infancy. As the family was laughing and playing in the kitchen, the doorbell rang. Yvonne went to answer it, and standing at the door was Bianca. She wasn't alone. Beside her stood a man who looked utterly flustered, his hands laden with gift boxes and bags. "Ah, Yvonne, Master Chef Thomas." Bianca's expression was a mix of awkwardness and a blatant attempt to curry favor. "We've arrived uninvited. I hope we aren't disturbing you two? My husband heard it was your father's big birthday today and insisted, absolutely insisted, that I bring him along to pay his respects." I looked at the man and found him somewhat familiar. After a moment of thought, I remembered. He was Bianca's husband, the very man who had once gone around telling everyone I was nothing more than a placeholder. Before I could say a word, Mr. Lou, who had become a total slave to his grandson, walked out from the living room with his hands tucked behind his back. He glanced at Bianca's husband, then at Bianca, and cleared his throat. "Well, since you're here, come in. But next time, don't bring so many people. My son-in-law's kitchen is small, and there aren't enough seats." Then, he added one more remark, his voice not loud, but clear enough for everyone to hear. After all, not just anyone has the status to eat a meal personally prepared by my son-in-law. Bianca's husband's face instantly turned a shade of red as dark as pig's liver. Yvonne and I looked at each other, both seeing the irrepressible laughter in each other's eyes. This proud little old man, so fiercely protective of his son-in-law, was truly becoming more lovable by the day. The story ends here. Thank you everyone for listening.